Hello guys, and welcome back to the Traitors episode 2, and today we have got so much to talk about. We have got a new traitor in our midst. We've got a banishment, the first banishment of the series, another challenge, lots and lots of suspicions, and someone else is getting the chop. Find out all on today's episode of The Traitors. Yeah, that was a cringy intro. I'm really sorry. I'm just trying out different things, you know. So, the last episode ended with the shocking cliffhanger, who's the fourth traitor? And we found out in this episode straight away. It's Miles. Yeah, we kind of guessed it was Miles from the sort of stature. It was slightly slimmer than Andrew's build, but it did not look like a woman's build at all, especially not Sonia or Diane, which were the options. So yeah, I was kind of convinced it was Miles. I think Miles is an interesting choice because he's someone that I don't think I would suspect. I think the other three I would suspect, but Miles was the one that I was like, that's a rogue shout. I wouldn't have expected that. And I think that's the perfect person to pick for your sort of devious traitor plan. So they brought up who had shields. Kyra has a shield, Jazz has a shield, and Harry obviously has a shield. And so they now need to decide who they should kill. And Anthony's name was brought up, but quickly dismissed. Aubrey's name was brought up as a threat. Sonia was brought up as a threat, and so was Diane. And they need to send a message that no one's safe. That's what they said. And I thought it was very, very interesting that they decided between those three people, Diane, Aubrey, and Sonia. They're three people that are studiers. They like to study people. They like to get reactions out of people in order to see how they're playing the game, whether they're doing it right or something like that. So it's very, very interesting that they decided to target those people first. Very interesting indeed, and it's also sending a message that, like they said, no one is safe. Interesting things about the breakfast table. Paul did a fantastic job of blending in, to the point where multiple people commented on the fact he looks genuinely happy to still be alive after the first murder. So clearly Paul is doing a fantastic job as a traitor, because he is blending in and people are genuinely thinking that there's nothing wrong with him at all, which I think is very, very interesting. Aubrey was unfortunately eliminated. Bit gutted, because I feel like he would have been a real fashionista for this series. His hat was iconic, and so was he. Sad to see him go, but I think they went with the smart choice. He was already saying, I have my suspicions, I know who the traitors are. He's got to go before he can impart that knowledge onto somebody else. I think it's very, very interesting. Sonia is sort of a little bit meddlesome, so she's already suspicious on her own. And Diane, sooner or later, is going to cause suspicion. So it's very interesting to see Aubrey head out, but I'd like to say I'm surprised. I'm not really surprised. And I don't think Diane was either. She knew exactly why he was eliminated, because he was too tuned in. He was watching people, and the traitors are obviously very, very scared of that. So before the challenge, there was a couple of interesting conversations. Charlie spoke about how she thinks Paul is definitely a faithful, which is so hilariously wrong, but pop off. Oh, I love it when they're like, oh, definitely a faithful, and they're literally a traitor stabbing you in the back. The next interesting thing was Sonia mentioning that she has a degree in studying how people behave in society. She did have an actual word for it, but I forgot what the word was. But again, I thought that was very, very interesting. Like Diane, like Aubrey, she's a studier. She's more of a casual studier. She won't just sit there and watch. She'll join in, but she'll constantly be observing at the same time. So I think that's another very, very interesting key thing that everyone's got to pay attention to. The next interesting thing was Molly was talking about her colostomy bag and how she does disability modelling. I thought it was very, very sort of sweet, and I feel like Molly is genuinely a very, very lovely person, and I'm excited to learn more about her because what I have learned about her is really endearing, but I do have a feeling she is going to get murdered. Or she could get banished. I don't know. It's very interesting because, like, you genuinely don't know who's going to make it that far because strategy changes every single episode, every single day, with every person voted out, every person murdered. The strategy changes. So she could become a threat, or she could just sail through to the final. We don't know. It's very interesting to me that Diane has currently brought up every single person who was originally a traitor, excluding Miles, as a potential suspect. She brought up Harry literally straight after they took off their blindfolds. She mentioned Paul in a conversation, talking about how she thinks he'd be a good traitor. But also in the same conversation, she was talking about how she doesn't like Anthony and she gives him bad vibe, or he gives her bad vibes, and thinks that he's got an ego, which was interesting. It was all to do with how Anthony wouldn't let her in the line or something like that, like on the first day, and he refused to sort of move aside and was like, no, I want to be here. And that annoyed her. And she's also brought up the fact that it could be Ash as well. So she's very tuned in. She's brought up every single one of their names. Ash is the only one that she's directly said I think could be a traitor, but still very, very interesting that Miss Diane is a little bit smarter than she thinks she is. Yeah, that's what I'm going with. So it's time for the challenge, and this challenge was all right. It wasn't the best challenge we've had on the Traitors. Sometimes the challenges can be a bit naff. Sometimes they're really, really fun, like the laser maze challenge. Last season was really, really entertaining. I also liked the bell challenge when they had to toll the bells and listen to the music boxes, and that's basically what they had to do here, except instead of music, it was bird noises. So they were split into two different teams, the outside group and the inside group. The outside group was told that they would have a chance to win a shield if they joined the outside team, but only if they took a detour and again took time out of the challenge to get themselves safety. Bear that in mind, because a lot of people, Andrew in particular, were like, forget about the shields, let's get the money. Okay, this is going to be important later, so just hang on to that. So there were three teams. Anthony, Andrew and Paul were one team. Jasmine, Harry and Molly were a second team, and Kyra, Diane and Brian were the third team. Three very distinct teams. Everyone else was inside. They had to listen to the bird noises made by the teams in the different areas around the grounds of the castle, and then they had to find the related bird noise and bring it to Claudia in order to get the money. Green team, which I'm pretty sure was Jasmine, Harry and Molly? I don't know. I think it was those. Green team was up first, which was Jasmine, Harry and Molly, and they smashed their first one. They managed to get it straight away. Blue team smashed the second one. I'm pretty sure was Kyra, Diane and Brian were blue team. I'm pretty sure. Then red team, which was Anthony, Andrew and Paul, went for the shield straight away, which I thought was very, very sneaky. It's interesting. Apparently, I think I missed this bit, but it was brought up again later, so I'm just going to take his word for it. But apparently Andrew, who before the challenge started was like, forget about the shields, guys, forget about the shields, decided that they should go for the shield first to guarantee their safety, which obviously Andrew was not going to disagree with. And Paul, who is he to disagree with the group? So they managed to get the shields for themselves, which I thought was very, very interesting. Then blue team, which was Diane's team, they mucked up the next one. They didn't get that one right. Green team smashed their second one. Red team smashed their second one. And then in an interesting twist, blue team, once they'd already done two, decided to go for the shield, but found that someone had already taken it. So there was a total of $6,000 on offer, and they only managed to get 4 grand of it, because obviously there were 7 stations, and if you took time out to go get the shield, you missed a station essentially. So only got 4 grand to add to the total. So essentially they're up to 19 grand in the prize pot currently. 15 grand from last episode, 4 grand from this episode. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it actually kind of is. So yeah, the challenge was completed. Fortunately, Red Team, was it Red Team? Yeah, Red Team did own up to the fact they did have the shields. But people are very upset with the fact that they went for the shields rather than going for the money, especially when people in the castle didn't have a chance to get the shields. So before the round table happened, lots of suspicions were flying. Paul mentioned that it was Andrew's idea to go get the shield. Kyra is also very suspicious of Andrew. Diane, Charlotte and Ross are suspicious of Andrew. And then Ross put Sonia forward, but Diane kind of sat there and was like, I wouldn't go for Sonia because if you vote against the crowd, it might not work out in your favour. And I think that's a very, very interesting thing to say, because if you vote against the group and the person voted out is a traitor, you look suspicious because you haven't voted with the crowd and you haven't helped to get a traitor out. So it's very, very difficult to understand those nuances. But I think it's a very, very good point that Diane put forward, I won't lie. So it's time to talk about the round table. And it's very, very interesting. I've tried to group the thoughts and feelings and the interesting moments into who was being accused at what time. So it will make a bit more sense than me doing it in chronological order. So Diane started by bringing up Anthony's line behaviour when he wouldn't let her in the line. Anthony clapped back immediately and was like that's a load of rubbish, basically. And then Charlotte chimed in and was like, well, you're being defensive, and she said that she's noted a change in his behaviour since they started. Obviously, Charlotte and Anthony were the first 2 people to meet on the station, and so essentially they've known each other the longest out of everyone, which I know is a load of rubbish. But it was very, very interesting to see her be like, I've noticed a change in you from when you first started the game to now. Something's changed, and could that be the fact that you're a traitor? But Zach actually stood up for Anthony and defended him, which was, again, very, very interesting. Unfortunately, we're moving on to the next point. That was pretty much where Anthony's kind of story ended for the round table. But we're moving on to Andrew and Shieldgate. So Kyra brought up the fact that Andrew was basically saying, forget about the shields, like, go for the money. But then he was the one that was basically told his team to go for the shields, essentially losing the money, which I thought was very, very interesting. Zach then, for some reason, chimed in and called her hypocritical because she decided to go for the shield the previous day. But then she claps back with, well, there were 3 shields on offer, 2 of them were in the water, and I can't swim, so I wanted to get the one that was on land. I made sure that I helped people before I went to go get it, and I was like, does anybody else need any help? And no one said yes, so I went and got the shield. I think Kyra's completely in the right in this situation. Zach was just being a bit of a dick. But yeah, very, very interesting that Zach clapped back when it wasn't even about him. If Andrew had done it, I think I'd have been like, yeah, fair. But Zach just chimed in for no apparent reason, which I thought was very, very interesting indeed. The next thing was that Harry brought up Zach's name, saying that he's always laughing a lot and he seems a little bit too comfortable in the game. Like, this game is about murder. You could be taken out at any opportunity. Banishment or the traitors murdering you at night. And he just seems a bit too jovial, a little bit too happy, and too like I said, comfortable within the game. And I think that's a very, very good point. You should be on edge. You should be worried. And he feels also that Harry feels that something has changed. A couple of other people chimed in and sort of agreed with that sentiment, but Zach basically just laughed it off and was like, okay, cool. Then finally, Ross brought up Sonia's sort of stirring, and she basically said, like, look, I do stir, but I'm not a traitor, so I don't really have anything else to say on the matter. So, like, yeah, sorry for doing that, I guess, guys. And I thought that it was interesting that she wasn't getting defensive. When people get defensive, my back gets up, but when you're kind of calm and be like, yeah, my bad, sure, I immediately want to trust you because I feel like you're telling the truth. As soon as you get defensive, that's when it's like, maybe you're hiding something. So yeah, Ross kept bringing that up, and then Johnny was like, well, Ross, if Sonia turns out to be faithful, I'm going to be looking at you. And then they had a little bit of a backwards and forth, being like, well, what do you mean you're going to be looking at me? What do you mean? And I think it's a very, very interesting point, and a very, very good point, that if you've brought up someone's name and they turn out to be faithful, that's a bit suspicious on you, because why have you brought them up? Their behaviour might have been suspicious, but they are, in fact, an ally, or they should have been an ally. They should have been a faithful. So, very, very interesting. The round table was a lot shorter than I thought it was. I thought they were going to go for a little bit longer, but Claudia cut them off and was like, guys, it's time to vote. And here is who voted for who. So, Jazz voted for Sonia. Diane voted for Anthony. Harry voted for Zach. Zach voted for Sonia. Johnny voted for Sonia. Molly voted for Sonia. Miles voted for Sonia. Tracy voted for Anthony. Sonia voted for Ross. Andrew voted for Sonia. Jasmine voted for Sonia. Ross voted for Sonia. Ash voted for Sonia. Andrew voted for Diane. Meg voted for Diane. Evie voted for Sonia. Brian voted for Sonia. Charlotte voted for Sonia. Paul voted for Sonia. Kyra voted for Sonia. Charlie voted for Sonia. So that means that out of a possible 21 people, I think, if I've done my maths correctly, Sonia received 16 votes. I think then Diane received 2, Ross received 1, Anthony received 2, and Zach received 1. Very, very interesting if you ask me. So Sonia was voted out. Sonia, my fave since first episode. Gutted that she's gone second episode. But I do think that she was playing the sort of minx, the sort of, ooh, I'm going to mix things up just a little bit too much. And I think she should have been more honest about it. Like, if I was going into the game and I wasn't a traitor, I'd still want to mix things up. But I would be honest about it, and I'd say, look, I am stirring up shit, but that's because I want to see how people react. I'm doing it to get reactions out of people, to see, okay, if I say this, if I drop this little seed in your brain, how is that going to grow? Is it going to lead to you cracking under the pressure? Or is it going to lead you to think that, oh, it could be that person, and then start going down a different path? I think you've got to be honest if you're going to be a faithful and still shit stir. You've got to be honest. You've got to be honest and be like, look, I am just seeing how people react to different things I say, because that's the only way I'm going to find out who's a traitor and who's a faithful. But she didn't really do that, and it sucked. So, yeah, unfortunately, Sonia was revealed to be a faithful, obviously, because we know she's a faithful. A couple of interesting things after that happened. Diane cheered, which was a little bit odd, and everyone kind of went, but she explained afterwards that the only reason why I was cheering was because I was right in the fact that I knew it wasn't Sonia. But then she realised, oh shit, I shouldn't be cheering because that makes it look really bad on me. So she did explain that quite quickly, which was good. I don't know whether that's going to be held against her, but I hope not. I do like Diane. We do like Diane. But on the whole, another murder had to happen that night. And it's tough. Harry brought up the fact that Diane had already said Ash's name, which was interesting. But the 3 people that they came down to was Johnny, Meg, and Kyra. Meg because she's very quiet, and they feel like it would throw everyone off the scent if they just went for a random kill. Kyra, because she's very domineering, she's very confident, and she kind of led parts of the round table. So killing her off would take that presence out of the game and mean that there's more confusion. And as for Johnny, I'm fairly certain that it was to sort of cast a bit of doubt on Ross, because obviously Ross and Johnny had their little spat at the round table, and I think that would be an equally interesting person to get rid of. Unfortunately, we do not know who died until episode 3, which I've already seen because it was out on BBC iPlayer early, but it's technically not coming out until later on tonight, which is Friday the 5th of December. So, guys, thank you guys very, very much for watching. Keep on ranting. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff, and I will see you guys in the next Traitors episode. Keep on ranting, and make sure you survive the night.